The first thing I noticed was how quiet the ranch felt that morning. No wind, no birds, just the sound of gravel crunching under unfamiliar tires. I looked up from the fence line and saw her standing there like she owned the place. Arms crossed, phone already in her hand, eyes scanning my land with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. Before I could say a word, she hit call and turned slightly away from me, her voice loud enough to make sure I heard every sentence. Yes, 911? There's a man trespassing on private property. He refuses to leave. This ranch belongs to my HOA now, and my son needs it. I remember thinking how strange it was that someone could say something like that so easily. Like land, history, and effort were just paperwork she could wave away. The sun was still low, stretching long shadows across the pasture. And behind her, my cattle stood calm, unaware that a story much bigger than them was unfolding. This ranch wasn't just dirt and fencing to me. It was years of early mornings, busted knuckles, and quiet nights spent fixing what broke instead of complaining about it. I'd bought it legally, lived on it, worked it, protected it. Yet here she was, claiming authority with nothing but entitlement and a phone call. The way she looked at me said everything. She had already decided who I was and where I belonged. She kept talking to the dispatcher, layering her story with urgency. She said I was aggressive. She said I was refusing to cooperate. She said her HOA had plans for this land, and that her son deserved it more than someone like me. Every word tightened the air between us. I stayed quiet, leaning against my truck, letting her speak. Sometimes silence tells you more than arguing ever could. What she didn't see was what was inside that truck. What she didn't know was why I wasn't nervous, or why I didn't raise my voice when she demanded I leave immediately. People like her are used to instant results, used to authority bending in their favor, and when it doesn't, they push harder. As she paced back and forth, phone still pressed to her ear, I watched her confidence grow. She smiled once, just briefly, as if she could already picture the ending. Me escorted off my own ranch, her son stepping into something he never earned. Somewhere in the distance, a siren began to echo faintly across the open land. That's when she finally turned and looked straight at me, chin raised, eyes sharp. They're on their way, she said. You should start packing. I glanced past her, toward the long road cutting through the fields, dust slowly lifting in the distance. I thought about how many times I'd driven that road, how many calls I'd answered, how many situations just like this one I'd handled, only usually from the other side. I reached into my truck, felt the familiar weight beneath my fingers, and closed the door calmly. She had no idea who she had just called for help. She didn't move after that, just stood there, watching me like I might bolt, like I might suddenly realize I was beaten. The ranch stayed quiet, but the tension felt loud, pressing in from every direction. I leaned against the truck, eyes on the fence line, letting the moment stretch. I'd learned a long time ago that people reveal more when you don't interrupt them. This wasn't the first time someone had tried to tell me I didn't belong. When I bought the ranch, the HOA had already been circling the area, talking about development, shared access, and community standards. Polite words that usually meant fences coming down and strangers deciding how you should live. I kept to myself, followed the law, paid my taxes, and stayed out of their meetings. That seemed to bother them more than anything else. She introduced herself while still on the phone, loud and deliberate, making sure the dispatcher and I both heard her name. She talked about her son like he was a victim of circumstance, said he'd been promised this land, said the ranch was supposed to be his fresh start. The way she told it, I wasn't a person at all, just an obstacle in the way of something she believed her family deserved. Her son stood a few steps behind her, hands shoved into his pockets. He couldn't have been more than 20. He avoided my eyes, stared at the ground, then at the fence, then back at his mother. There was something uneasy about him, like he'd been dragged into a fight he didn't fully understand. I wondered how much of this story he actually knew, and how much had been decided for him. As she kept talking, she pointed at my house, my barn, my cattle. She told the dispatcher the property was being illegally occupied, that I was refusing to comply, that I was becoming hostile. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step closer. I stayed exactly where I was. Still, she kept adding details, stacking them higher, like the truth needed help to stand up. What she didn't know was how carefully I'd built my life here. This ranch had come after years of working jobs that kept me away from home, after nights spent wondering if the badge was worth what it took. Out here, I finally had space to breathe, space to think, space where no one told me who I was supposed to be. The siren grew louder now, then faded, then came back again as the vehicle turned somewhere beyond the hills. Her confidence sharpened with the sound. She straightened her back, lowered her voice, and gave the dispatcher one last push. "Please hurry," she said. "I don't feel safe." That sentence hung in the air long after she ended the call. I watched her son shift his weight, his jaw tightening. I watched the road. I thought about how quickly stories change once authority arrives, and how dangerous assumptions can be when they're made too fast. The dust cloud on the road grew thicker, closer, and for the first time since she arrived, I saw a flicker of doubt cross her face. Just a second, just enough to make me wonder what she thought was about to happen next. The patrol vehicle still hadn't appeared, but the sound of it felt closer now, like a reminder ticking in the back of my head. The woman kept glancing down the road, then back at me, as if trying to measure how this was all going to end. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Less sharp, more calculated. She started talking about rules, HOA bylaws, zoning maps, clauses she clearly didn't fully understand but had memorized just enough to sound convincing. She said the ranch sat on land that was meant to be shared, that my fences were out of compliance. She framed it as concern, like she was doing me a favor by getting law enforcement involved. The shift was subtle, but I'd seen it before. When authority doesn't bend right away, entitlement puts on a polite mask. Her son finally spoke, just once. "Mom, maybe we should wait," he said quietly. She shot him a look that shut him down instantly. Whatever doubts he had, they weren't allowed to surface here. That moment told me more than any document ever could. This wasn't just about land. It was about control. I thought about the complaints that had been trickling in over the past few months. Anonymous calls about noise, about livestock smells, about suspicious activity. All of them vague, all of them unprovable. I'd handled them like any other report, logged, reviewed, closed. Standing there now, watching her pace my driveway, I started to wonder how many of those complaints traced back to her. The moral weight of it pressed in quietly. I was standing on my own property, but I was also standing inside a situation I usually approached in uniform. Out here, without the badge visible, I was just another man being accused. Part of me wanted to end it fast, flash the truth, shut it down. But another part of me knew this was bigger than one confrontation. How often had she done this to others who didn't have the same protection? The wind picked up, rustling the grass along the fence. She stepped closer to my truck, peering inside like she was looking for proof of something. Her confidence wavered, just slightly, when she saw how calm I was. People expect fear. They expect anger. Calm makes them uneasy. In the distance, another vehicle slowed near the road, then kept moving. Not the patrol car. Her jaw tightened. She pulled her phone back out, thumb hovering over the screen, ready to call again if things didn't go her way. Her son drifted farther back, closer to the fence. He ran his hand along the weathered wood, eyes tracing the cracks and nail marks left by years of repairs. For a moment, he looked like he understood what this place meant. Then his mother cleared her throat loudly, pulling him back into her version of the story. I shifted my stance, feeling the familiar weight at my side, still hidden, still unspoken. The dust on the road thickened again, this time unmistakable. Whoever was coming would be here soon. And when they arrived, everything about this story, who was right, who was believed, and who had power, was about to be tested in ways none of us were fully prepared for. The sound of tires on gravel finally cut through the air. Slow, deliberate, close enough now that there was no mistaking it. The woman straightened instantly, shoulders back, chin high, like she was stepping onto a stage she believed she'd rehearsed for. Her son froze where he stood, eyes flicking between her and the road. I stayed where I was. The patrol vehicle appeared at the bend in the driveway, sunlight flashing off the windshield. Dust rolled behind it in a thick cloud that hung over the pasture. For a moment, everything felt suspended. No one speaking, no one moving. Just the engine idling and the quiet hum of tension stretching thin. She rushed forward before the vehicle had even fully stopped. Words poured out of her, fast and rehearsed. Trespassing, harassment, fear, Choe authority. She pointed back at me with sharp, chopping motions, painting a picture that didn't need evidence, only confidence. The kind that relies on being believed. The deputy stepped out slowly, not rushed, not aggressive. His eyes moved from her to me, then to the ranch behind us. He took in the fences, the house, the cattle. He asked her to slow down. She didn't. I could feel it then, the pull between two roles I carried. Ranch owner, lawman, one visible, one hidden. My hand rested near the truck door, close enough to what was inside to remind me of the weight of timing. When to speak, when to wait. She kept talking, louder now, saying I'd refused to identify myself, saying I'd made her uncomfortable, saying her son felt threatened. The words stacked up, faster than the truth could keep pace. Her son shook his head slightly, almost imperceptible, but said nothing. Silence can be a kind of betrayal too. The deputy turned to me, asked my name. I gave it. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. A flicker. Recognition, maybe, or confusion. He glanced back at her, then at the vehicle, then at the road behind him where another set of headlights appeared in the distance. Her confidence wavered, just for a second. She crossed her arms again, defensive now, and added one last detail. Something about prior complaints, about reports already filed. She said this wasn't the first time I'd caused problems. She said the HOA had documentation. She said this would all be handled once I was removed. The deputy asked her to step back. She didn't like that. I could feel my pulse in my ears, steady but loud. This was the edge of it. The moment before everything tipped one way or the other. The moment when stories collide with records and assumptions meet reality. The second vehicle slowed at the gate. The deputy looked at me again. His hand hovered near his radio. I took a breath, eyes on the horizon, knowing that whatever happened next would change the way this ranch, and everyone standing on it, would be seen forever. The second vehicle rolled slowly up the driveway, dust swirling in the sunlight, and for a moment, everything froze. Then it hit me, the driver wasn't who we expected. It wasn't just another deputy. It was the HOA president herself, stepping out with a clipboard in hand, eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. She looked at her colleague, the first deputy, and then at the woman standing in my driveway, and something shifted. Shock, hesitation, recognition. The first woman's confidence wavered. Her voice faltered mid-sentence as she tried to keep control, tried to frame the story she'd rehearsed. I called because... She stammered. But the HOA president didn't wait for explanation. Instead, she pulled out a stack of papers, flipping through them with crisp precision, and held one up. Actually, these records show the ranch is fully compliant. No violations. The only complaint filed was from your own son's neighborhood friends last month. You've misrepresented the situation. Her son froze, eyes wide. His mother's hand trembled slightly, clutching the phone. The facade she had carried so easily began to crack. Every word she'd spoken to the dispatcher, every accusation, suddenly hung in the air like smoke, thin, sharp, undeniable. The first deputy glanced between the two women, then back at me. Recognition settled in, like the pieces of a puzzle clicking together. His hand left the radio. Sir, can you confirm your identity? He asked, a hint of caution in his tone. I leaned casually against the truck, hand brushing against the hidden weight at my side. You already know, I said quietly. I'm the sheriff. The words landed like a thunderclap. The first woman's jaw dropped. Her son stepped back, finally looking at me, a mix of fear and awe in his eyes. The second vehicle's arrival, her mother's revelation, and my identity combined into a moment that none of us would forget. She opened her mouth to protest, but no words came. Instead, she glanced at her son, whose expression had shifted from doubt to silent pleading, as if asking why no one had told him the truth sooner. Betrayal flashed across his face. Toward his mother, toward the story she'd spun, toward the world he thought he understood. The HOA president folded the papers, gave a firm nod to the deputy, and turned toward the woman. "You misled everyone. This stops now." Her son exhaled slowly, relief and confusion tangled together. The first woman's eyes darted from the ranch, to me, to the arriving vehicles. She realized the battle she thought she controlled had already been lost. Every step she had taken to manipulate the truth, every assumption she had made, now hung exposed. I could see the tension in the air spike again, not with fear of what might happen next, but with the knowledge that the stakes had just been raised. Her son, the HOA, the deputy, even the land itself, they were all players in a story that had just shifted violently. And the question now wasn't who was right. It was what would happen when the truth finally settled, and no one could rewrite it. The wind rustled the grass along the fence, carrying the sound of heavy breathing, the faint scrape of shoes, and the weight of decisions that none of us could take back. Everything was about to collide. The air between us was thick enough to choke on. The woman's face had gone pale, her earlier confidence stripped away by the combined weight of truth and authority. Her son lingered behind her, unsure whether to step forward or retreat, eyes wide as if seeing the world for the first time. I took a step toward the gate, slowly, deliberately, letting my presence settle into the moment. The first deputy finally spoke, voice steady. "Ma'am, I need you to step back and stop interfering. Your claims are false, and the property belongs to this man." He gestured toward me. The papers in the HOA president's hand were clear, indisputable. I had all the legal rights I needed. She opened her mouth, but the words that came out were weak, stumbling over themselves. I didn't know." Her son's gaze flicked toward me. Something unspoken passed between them, a silent confrontation of loyalty, truth, and the weight of entitlement. I leaned against the truck, the badge now catching the sunlight from the window above the dashboard. "You called 911 to remove me from my own ranch," I said quietly, letting each word land. "You didn't know who you were calling." My tone was calm, measured, but the authority behind it was unmistakable. Her son stepped forward this time, hesitant but resolute. "Mom, she's right," he said, voice cracking. We were wrong. I shouldn't have listened to you." The woman froze, eyes narrowing, her carefully constructed narrative unraveling in front of everyone. The HOA president shook her head slowly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "It's done," she said. "No further action will be taken. The property is yours, fully compliant. All complaints dismissed." For a moment, relief washed over the ranch. The dust on the road settled. The distant hills returned to quiet. The cattle resumed their grazing, unaware of the human drama that had nearly destroyed it. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension drain from my shoulders, though I kept my eyes on the woman. She turned abruptly and stormed toward her car, dragging her son along. He hesitated, glancing at me one last time, as if apologizing without words. They drove off, leaving nothing but dust and echoes behind. I closed the truck door, hand brushing over the badge once more. Everything had shifted. The lies, the assumptions, the stakes. They all dissolved under the weight of truth. But just as I thought the storm had passed, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from an unknown number. Asterisk, we saw everything. This isn't over. Asterisk, I frowned, scanning the road ahead, the hills beyond, wondering who had been watching, and what the next challenge would bring. Even when victory feels complete, the world has a way of reminding you that peace is often only temporary. For now, though, the ranch was mine. The past confrontation exposed, the lesson clear, but the shadow of the unexpected lingered, a quiet pulse in the sunlight, hinting that the next storm might already be on its way. The dust had settled, and for the first time in hours, the ranch felt quiet again. The fences, the barn, the open fields, they all stood unchanged, indifferent to the chaos that had passed over them. I walked slowly along the edge of the property, letting the sunlight warm my face, listening to the soft murmur of the cattle grazing nearby. There was a sense of calm now, but also reflection, a moment to think about what had happened and what it revealed. Her son had stayed behind just long enough to glance at me, eyes full of questions, curiosity, and the hint of respect. He hadn't known the full story, hadn't understood his mother's actions, but in that fleeting look, I saw recognition of a truth he couldn't ignore: the value of honesty, of integrity, and of standing for what is right. The woman herself was gone, but the weight of her entitlement and the mistakes she made would linger, a lesson in how quickly power can be misused when guided by assumptions rather than understanding. I thought about the role I'd played, both as a ranch owner and as a sheriff. The balance between authority and empathy had never been clearer. Out here, on my land, the law wasn't just a badge. It was a responsibility, a reminder that every decision carries consequences, and every action is observed, whether immediately or from a distance. The lesson wasn't just for them, it was for me too. Patience, restraint, and measured responses often speak louder than anger or confrontation. The HOA president had driven off, satisfied that justice and truth had prevailed. The first deputy had left with a nod, understanding that sometimes the law is about more than citations or arrests. It's about protecting what's right and standing firm when someone tries to distort the truth. The young man's journey wasn't over, but I hoped he carried a seed of clarity about how to navigate loyalty, influence, and moral responsibility in his life. I paused by the gate, looking down the long driveway. Every tire track, every footprint, every moment of tension was a reminder that life is rarely simple. People make assumptions. People act out of fear or desire. But the truth eventually has a way of settling, of revealing itself in its own time. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the morning lift. The ranch was mine, the confrontation resolved. And yet, there was that quiet understanding that life continues to challenge, that even in victories, vigilance is necessary. As I turned back toward the house, I thought about what I would tell anyone who asked how I handled it. It wasn't about power. It wasn't about proving someone wrong. It was about holding steady, letting the truth guide every decision, and trusting that integrity will always outlast false assumptions. Because in the end, the lesson is simple. Stand for what is yours, speak truth with calm, and let actions, not anger, shape the outcome. And if you find yourself facing a battle that feels bigger than you, remember this: patience, clarity, and the courage to wait for the right moment can turn even the fiercest confrontation into a story of quiet triumph. The ranch was quiet now, but life, as always, would continue, full of new challenges, new lessons, and the ever-present chance to act with integrity.